Hello everyone, I'm Ina Mann. Welcome to Higher Ground. Pipeline politics can turn nasty, especially here in BC. Activists opposing Kinder Morgan's proposed Trans Mountain pipeline expansion protested on Burnaby Mountain last fall and placed the National Energy Board in its crosshairs. The NEB regulates pipelines in Canada and is under fire over its pipeline review process and what protesters claim is a lack of public consultation and indifference by the regulator to climate change. What's the NEB's response? Find out in our exclusive interview with the chairman of NEB, Peter Watson. ResourceWorks' Barinder Basodi caught up with him for an in-depth sit-down interview last week. Let's check it out.
For those who don't know, what does the National Energy Board do?
Well, we're the regulator of interprovincial pipelines and international power lines. We regulate the full life cycle of these pieces of infrastructure that go into the ground. So right from the time of construction right through to its eventual abandonment, we're on the job every day to ensure public safety and environment is protected.
In that role, and as you know, here in British Columbia, there's been a lot of controversy over the pipeline, Enbridge, Northern Gateway, Kinder Morgan. How has what's happened on Burnaby Mountain affected the way that the National Energy Board has made their decisions?
Well, I recognize, and the board recognizes, that there's a lot of, there's a wide range of views on these projects, and there's a lot of emotion around the debate on energy issues in the country today. Now, having said that, it's still the board's responsibility, and we take it very seriously, to do a very fair, open, and transparent review, because we have the difficult job of weighing the evidence and coming to a conclusion about whether the project is in the public interest. So I know there have been issues, and there has been concerns, and there has been some controversy, particularly around Burnaby Mountain and one of the applications in front of us. But our job is still to assemble the information and reach a conclusion independently as to whether we believe it's in the public interest for the project to proceed. And we'll continue to go down that path and do our very best job at ensuring a fair and open and a transparent process for people.
So in talking about the concerns that have been raised, what are your understandings specifically about the concerns?
Some of them fall specifically within our mandate at the National Energy Board. There are other issues that are just not within the board's mandate. So I know there's a debate going on in the country today regarding climate change and greenhouse gas reductions. We do not regulate the development that occurs upstream of the pipe, nor do we regulate the development that occurs downstream of a pipe. Our challenge is we stick to our mandate. So I recognize that people have concerns about these issues. We care about climate change and greenhouse gas emissions. We take them into account as it relates to our project, but I just can't step outside of our mandate and do things that other governments and other regulatory jurisdictions have responsibility for.
And so you get to a really good point in terms of understanding the specific concerns, recognizing that there are concerns that are outside of your mandate and others that are within your mandate, but that must put you as a regulator in a bind.
Well, I know that again, there's a wide range of views, and not everybody is going to agree with the conclusion that our panel comes to. When
you're grappling with the question, is the country better with this project or without this project, there must be considerable pressure on you to be talking with the federal government on the issue of climate change. Is that doable?
We care about the issue. We do actually consider the issue of greenhouse gas emissions associated with the construction and operation and maintenance of our projects, and we take that into account. But again, I think we have to remember that we're a regulator, and as a regulator, it is not really our job to advocate and take a view on a particular policy issue. It's up to governments in this country to deal with policy issues and provide direction, and that's where we get our mandate from, is the policy that Parliament has set for the National Energy Board. So again, I realize that people they have a specific perspective on how our process should be used. Our view as a regulator is that we have to stick to our mandate and be neutral and impartial and not be seen to be advocating for issues on one side of the ledger or the other.
So what about the question about the amount of consultation? What's your response to that?
Well, we have a duty to be fair and responsible in our process. We have a duty to follow the principles of natural justice. People have concerns about the fact that we allow directly affected people to have standing in our processes. We also allow people who have relevant information that our board needs to hear to get it on the record so that we can make the best decision. I recognize that people have concerns that not everybody can come. But again, people need to realize what this process is for. This process is not, it's not a referendum on an issue. It's to allow people who are directly affected and people who have relevant information, it's to ensure the panel gets the evidence that they need to come to a conclusion. We do have to run a fair and efficient process, and that's why we go to great pains to ensure that anybody that's impacted and anybody that has something relevant is there and that information's on the record. We're struggling, quite frankly, because there is more demand for our processes than ever before. The Trans Mountain expansion has 400 active interveners. Yes. Yeah. In 2006 or 7, I can't remember when Trans Mountain did a looping project through Jasper National Park, there were only 8 interveners. So our panels really take care to ensure that the processes they put in place are fair and responsible for all 400 of those interveners.
And within those 400 interveners, you know, one of the things that I'm familiar with is now the role of municipal governments, which is the most direct level to communities. Is there been a shift in that area as well in terms of the work that the National Energy Board is doing?
One of the things that I'm doing right now is going across the country and meeting with communities and stakeholders in all of the provinces and territories. And it was something that I felt the National Energy Board could do better at, is outreach and engagement with the communities where there's infrastructure already in the ground. And so I'm meeting with many municipalities right across this country and talking to them about the core issue of pipeline safety. What do we do every day to ensure that the infrastructure that's already in the ground is operated safely, and we know and understand the integrity of that infrastructure, and we have good plans in place, God forbid, if there ever is an incident. And I want stronger relationships with municipalities because I believe our interests are completely aligned for the protection of their citizens. And so notwithstanding that we have this difficult role to assess a new project and determine if it's in the public interest, we are absolutely obsessed with the safety of the infrastructure that's in the ground today, and I want a stronger relationship with municipalities on how we go about doing that.
We've had an example here in the Lower Mainland of both Burnaby and Vancouver who are challenging the National Energy Board's decision and taking it as far as saying that it's a question around the Canadian Constitution. And so, do they have cause for complaints?
You know, I know that everybody has strong views.
Yes.
Regarding the issue of the constitutional question, you know, there's an example where I believe that our panel did the right thing. What our panel said essentially was the company should be allowed to collect the information it needs to file a complete application in front of the National Energy Board. So I think there was a large debate around it, but quite frankly, our view is that if the company couldn't collect the information, we wouldn't have what we needed to properly assess whether that project or that particular route is a good thing or not. And so that the decision of the board in that question was very narrow and did not go wider into the municipal jurisdiction. It just went as far as it had to allow us to collect the information we needed to get it on the public record. And I think that was responsible of our panel to do, and our decision has been upheld. we have a duty to run a fair and open process, and we are doing that.
I am going to read you a comment from one of the followers that we've received online, because I think the consultation piece is a good piece, but the engagement piece is the more important piece. So happy to hear about the work that you're doing with municipalities. But you know, one of our followers says, what I don't like is the impression that the decisions have been made prior to the so-called public consultation. It seems to go through the motions only to justify the rubber stamping of the Prime Minister's policies. You must get comments like that a lot.
Yes. I've been quite open with people that, you know, the board has turned down projects in its history. Now, admittedly, that hasn't happened a lot. And there's lots of instances where we say, no, this approach needs to be adjusted, or that your plans over here aren't good enough and we want to see some improvements to them. So it's not just about the big no. There's also a whole series of things that we do when we regulate through the life cycle and as we review their applications to strengthen it, test it, challenge it, and ensure that it can be operated in the public interest. This is a life cycle regulatory oversight, and we collect the information we need at the public interest stage, and then we keep collecting more and more and more, and we keep assessing the performance every step of the way during the execution of the project.
And the word responsibilities come up a number of times as, you know, we've been having this conversation, and I think now the recent example of the bunker fuel spill in English Bay from the grain ship, you know, it did cause some damage, and it definitely raised alarm bells and about spill response. And you know, some are saying, why should we let Kinder Morgan expand? Look what could happen. What do you think, and how do we respond to that?
Well, again, I want to remind people that notwithstanding this new application, we have infrastructure in the ground, and we have an operating facility that delivers 300,000 barrels a day to that terminal, and ships that are going in and out of the inlet. So I'm very concerned as the head of the National Energy Board that the company has got a good plan in place, that the players in the region all know how they would work together if there was ever an incident at that facility. And I want to make sure that we're continuing to test and challenge that on an ongoing basis. These types of incidents, they're always unfortunate, and there's always something to learn, because the emergency management systems, there's a lot of players involved that have to work together in unified command, incident command systems. And we need to take advantage of what we learn on each thing, even if it's occurring outside of the pipeline sector.
As we talk about Canada and pipelines, and if you could add sort of a personal component. I mean, you're in this role with a lot of responsibility. You're entrusted by Canadians and the Canadian government. What brought you here, and why are pipelines important to Canada? I mean,
that's a
I know,
good question.
Well, and I know it's because I think really people need to hear people's personal stories, right? Because of why have you brought your name? Why has Peter Watson said, listen, this is important. I'm going to take on this challenge because this is what I bring to the table, but this is also what I give back to you.
So, before I joined the National Energy Board, I spent 32 years with the government of Alberta. I'm a career public servant.
Okay.
My training is in water resources. I spent most of my time working in the Environment Department in Alberta.
Oh, very interesting fact.
And I became Deputy of Environment. I spent time as Deputy of Energy, and then I had the privilege to be the head of the Public Service for a couple of years. But throughout all of that, I've been working on resource management issues my whole life. And of course, coming from Alberta, you know, you get a sense of how important resource management is to the economy, not just the province of Alberta, but to the country. There's no question that Canada has significant resources, and that's a huge asset and advantage to the country. There's also no question that the oil and gas industry, for example, is a large part of our economy in this country. At the same time, developing resources responsibly is a passion of mine. And it's what I've been working my whole life for. And so I just thought it was a terrific opportunity to come to the National Energy Board and to be able to work with the great people at the National Energy Board on the regulation of pipelines. And I do want to assure your viewers that when we go into a review, we're not for the project or against the project. We're just trying to understand it and weigh whether the country is better off with it than without it.
And that's it for Higher Ground this week. Make sure to visit our website at resourceworks.com, sign up for our e-newsletter, and don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. For ResourceWorks, I'm Mina Mann. Thanks for watching.